Hi, this is Matt Drinkall, the head football coach at Kansas Wesleyan University, and you're listening to the Coach and Coordinator Podcast with Keith Grabowski.
On today's podcast, we go back into our archives with the discussion we had with Matt Drinkall, who is now the tight ends coach at Army. At the time, he was the head football coach at Kansas Wesleyan, where he did an outstanding job in bringing that program to NAIA national prominence. I've always been very impressed with Coach Drinkall, and you're going to see why here. A lot of our podcasts are buried in the archives, and I'm going to do my best to bring some of those out from time to time, and I think this is an outstanding one. If you haven't heard it before, please enjoy. If you have heard it before, I know there's a lot of great stuff in this one that you're going to enjoy hearing again. Coach Drinkall, thanks for joining us on the Coaching Coordinator Podcast.
Keith, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Coach, there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but let's start with this turnaround that you've had at Kansas Wesleyan. So you took over a program that had been struggling of late. In your first season, you went 2-9, and then in the next year, you guys had the best season in school history, going 10-1 the regular season, and making the playoffs the first time since 2002. What was the key for you in the turnaround as you began your first head coaching job? What things did you do immediately that made the difference for you that you're able to do that?
Well, the first thing was, I guess, the assessment of it. I had been an offensive coordinator leading up to that point, but had interviewed and been offered some different jobs kind of every off season in the hiring cycle. And there was three things I always thought a place had to have that I was really kind of particular about, which was, a wide variety of academic offerings, every resource you need for football success, meaning game, field, practice facilities, locker room, weight room, all that stuff, and then a good place to live and go to college, like the social and community setting. So if a place has those three, I think it should be taken very seriously as far as head coaching opportunity. And Kansas Wesleyan and Salina, Kansas had those three coming up. We had to build a stadium. They were in the final processes of fundraising for that and getting that process done. But the reality was when I got hired, there were 38 kids on the team, and they had no real strong tradition, and we knew no matter what, that first year was going to be rough. So what we did, there was two big things I thought the first year that was really important was we never wavered from our plan. We didn't try to cut corners or use Band-Aids to fix artery bleeds. We kind of took our lumps, knowing that was going to result in, there was nothing we were going to be able to do that was going to result in winning games a whole bunch that first year. So what we wanted to do was improve. And then the second thing that we wanted to do was, how do you define success within your program outside of just winning and losing games? The analogy I always use is a pitcher can go out and pitch a one-hitter and lose. That doesn't mean he pitched bad. So if you strictly define success as wins and losses, you're going to be in for some big trouble, and I think a lot of that carries over to your regular everyday life. So we didn't waver, and we really wanted to define how we did it and stayed the course and had a good plan in place as far as how we were going to utilize the resources here and what we needed to do within the conference to win and what changes need to be made culturally here to get going.
And I know, looking at your bio and some of the first things you said as the head coach at Kansas Wesleyan, is you focus really on three things. Number one, you're going to be smart. Number two, you're going to be physical. And the third thing you focused on, usually you hear work or accountability or those kinds of things, you focused on the word fun. In fact, you said our players will be proud to be part of a team and will have a blast doing it. And that's a little bit different than what you usually hear. So how did the fun factor, I guess, play a part in it?
Well, I'm 34 years old, and I'm the oldest coach on our whole staff. Our average age of our staff is almost 27 years old. So we're a young group of guys, and I think, the more I've learned, I've been really, really lucky. I've coached at different levels from Division I to high school, and I've coached every position in football except defensive line. So I've been really lucky to be around during my coaching career, really, really good coaches and good people. I've seen all different kinds of personalities, and what's really changed with me and how I go about my approach is I'm going to do stuff the way I think is right. And what I mean by that is you can't try to be I think a lot of young coaches, every coach does this. I certainly used to really bad, but you try to emulate a coach that you looked up to. Well, most of the coaches I looked up to and that were huge professional influence on me, I'm a weird dude, man. My personality couldn't be any different from those guys. So you really kind of being ourselves were the two things I think of is that I don't think football should be your whole life because it ends for everybody at some point, but I think it should be a supplemental part of your life, going along with a lot of different things that go into that pot that, make up your everyday. So I see it as I want 2 hours of your day, and the 2 hours you spend with me should be the 2 hours you look forward to the most. And we constantly run internal assessments to figure out, like, what are different things we can be doing to make it so our kids are re-energized. And I will, even if it's doing activities as a group, there was, we, in the middle of our 2015 season when we had a lot of success and we got done with a practice in the middle of the year, and I was talking to the kids about the movie Tombstone, and they hadn't seen it. And I realized, like, most of these kids were born in, like, 1994, 95 after that movie came out. So we just canceled practice the next day and rented out a movie theater and showed it in the big screen and went and got, popcorn and pretzels and pop and all that stuff and watched Tombstone because because it was kind of we're in the middle of the year. We're going to run power and inside zone and line up and fit your run fits and cover three and all that stuff. And it was more important that we do that stuff. So I don't know. It was just, I think that's so important. I think people lose sight of that it's a game that's supposed to be fun, and our kids work their butt off and like everybody else's do. And you want to make it, I think that's an important battle to fight, is to make sure it's continuing to have fun for those guys.
And you mention it as a battle, and I think that's interesting. It's a battle to have fun. And you think about, especially in terms when you're taking over, you got 38 guys. Maybe they are not in the best place in their frame of mind as far as what they want to do. And you say, we're going to have fun. How tough is that to instill in a culture, especially when you think in terms of just what you generalize in football, that it's going to be a tough, really work-driven, nose to the grindstone kind of experience, and you come in and say, guys, we're going to have fun. How do you instill that? What are the first things you do to make that happen?
Well, it's hard. It's hard, and like I said, staying the course and being disciplined within that is definitely a challenge, because it's kind of finding that balance of the two, where you got to be able to push them hard and then be able to reward them for doing what they want to, achieving what you want them to. And I think one of the smartest things that we do, maybe the only smart thing we do, is we talk about failure and what we really refer to as either like resiliency or friction. We talk about that all the time. There's, like, in your life, whatever, whether you're dating a girl or playing somebody online in a video game or studying for a class, whatever it is, things don't ever go the way you plan them to. You know what I mean? Like they never just go smooth. That never happens. So we prepare and plan for when bumps come in the road, or I read a lot. I'm a big history guy and read a lot about military stuff, and the SEALs talk about, they never use the word adversity. They always use the word friction, because it just slows you down for a little bit and you get through it. You're just going to get through it no matter what. So I think that, we do a really good job preparing our kids psychologically that almost never anything goes perfect. And very rarely do you find a play that's blocked perfectly, or, punt protection. You go through a whole year and no punts get blocked or whatever. It's perfect weather every day. And so I think it's just, like I said, that balance of pushing your kids really hard and rewarding them for when they do exactly what you're trying to get out of it.
Coach, how do you condition your freshmen to get that ingrained in them, initially? They want to come in and impress you, and they're going to come in and work hard. How do you get them to, take a step back and become part of that culture that, hey, we're going to work hard, but we're going to have fun?
So I actually talked to a coach who used to work for me, who's now the offensive coordinator at Coe College, named Myers Hendrickson. And I just talked to him about this, because we do have this really neat internal leadership thing we do in the off season. And I was just talking with Myers about this, that really there's 4 areas. You can't ask everything from the same kids, because they can't do it all. So really, if you look at like the 4 stages of a player's development, or what they need to be really good at, if you had to put a theme I guess is the best word to use, is a theme into what they need to do is freshmen need to be coachable. Listen to what your coaches say and do it. Listen to what your upperclassmen say and do it. If you can be coachable as freshmen, the brand new people, that's your only job, be coachable. The sophomores being able to know what we do and why we do it. Hey, these are the plays we run. This is the times we lift. This is why we practice this way. So sophomores know what we do, why we do it. The juniors really focusing on leadership and the seniors focusing on legacy. And when you stagger it that way and you really only ask those things from those people, you really it kind of walks them right along the conveyor belt of assembling exactly the kind of program or culture that you want.
I think everybody understands the leadership part, and we talk about that quite a bit here on this podcast. Talk to us about the legacy part that your seniors are responsible for.
Well, I'll give a great example of that. Is that my first year here, arguably my favorite player that I have ever coached in my entire career was a senior in that class. And I don't think he started a single game his entire college career here. But he was a kid named Sam Vaughn, who is now going through Green Beret School, who was our valedictorian as a 4.0 student here. He was a team captain who was going into the senior season to be the starting quarterback. And we recruited a kid named Jake Curran, who came in and ended up as the conference player of the year at quarterback. So he got beat out and was the most selfless, what can I do, energetic, unbelievable person. And he was a really good leader, like one-on-one behind the scenes, and really went out of his way. And that guy gets talked about more than any other kid in the 3 seasons I've been here than I've ever been around. He might get talked about more than any kid I've ever, of any program I've been around, because of the legacy he left behind. And that's what I try to, he's taught me as much as he taught any kid, as far as, you know, if you take the football part of it away, if you take just your talent away, what are the people going to say about you when you're gone? What are the secretaries, what are the janitors, what are your teammates, what are the coaches, what are they going to say about you? Are they going to say that you were, you know, you always brought energy, you were always fun to be around, you made the room better when you walked into it, you were the toughest dude there was, you were the best preparation guy? Are they going to say those things, or are they going to say loser qualities about you? You know, our kids will laugh because I say it 7,000 times a week probably, but you win with winners and you lose with losers. My mom knows absolutely nothing about football. And if it was easy as reading an Excel sheet that this guy's 6'4", 240 pounds, and runs this and jumps that and lifts this, my mom could just make NFL team tomorrow. So that is not, in my opinion, you know, you like some of that stuff, but really if you categorize all the people that you've had success with, they're winners as people or they're losers. And you got to try to get as many of those guys in and onto that side of the fence as possible.
Coach, let's focus on another part of you know, what you said, those 3 things you're going to do in the program. You said you're going to have a physical style, and obviously that's something that you do on both sides of the ball and in your special teams as well. Describe to us, and I know you're an offensive guy, describe to us your offense. What gives your offense a physical style and the way you do it?
So we're a power spread offense. That's kind of been my whole, I guess, what I've really focused in or honed in on. But you know, I was a receiver as a player, but I'm an O-line coach by trade. I'll tell you, you know, just everywhere I've ever been, my high school program, my college program, just everywhere you look at, there's some consistencies as far as what's causing teams to win. Everybody practices, everybody watches film, everybody lifts weights, everybody has cool uniforms. All that's a push. So then how come there are teams that always win and teams that always lose or struggle? And really what you try to find those other variables or commonalities between successful programs, and I try to study that like crazy. And the thing that, you know, I was born and raised in 2-back old school pro-style offenses, and really I just spoke at a clinic 2 weeks ago, and my biggest contention is over the last, as far as I can tell, pertaining to offensive football, the 2 biggest things that have changed over the last 60 years is, one, utilizing space on the field as a resource, the same way you would personnel groupings, formations, or plays. And the second thing is being able, the frequency or tempo of which you do those things. Now, when I say tempo, I don't just mean going a million miles an hour right away, but there's all kinds of ways you can tempo people. whether that's, traditional huddle, sugar huddle, go really fast, go really slow, look tempo, knowing how to utilize those things. So we're a power spread off. I'll tell you when my whole light bulb moment came was I'm thinking it was 2012, but the 2012 Rose Bowl when Wisconsin played Oregon. That's the most fun I've ever had. I've never been transfixed on something like that in my entire life, because you were watching this game of Chip Kelly and his, 10 personnel, 11 personnel offense versus Wisconsin and their 22 and 12 team. And they couldn't go, they're both trying to do the exact same thing. And they're both absolutely elite at it. And they go about it completely separate ways. Wisconsin, at that time was, when Paul Chryst was running offense, they were much slower, trades, shifts, motions, double changes, strength, all that stuff. And Oregon was really pretty simplistic as far as formations and using tempo. So that's when I, really started to think in my head, is there a way to kind of combine these two things? So, the biggest thing for us is, like, if you offensively, we carry two run families. We're an inside zone team and we're a gap team, power and what you guys, or what people would probably call like F counter or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's really the only two runs we carry. And we really, we window dress the heck out of stuff to make it look like we're doing more than we really are. And it's hard because we carry complementary stuff, but then we build in some RPO things that'll, again, allow you to have to defend the whole field. So if I'm running power into a 6-man box the same way you used to in 1991, but now there's 6 guys there instead of 9, that's way easier to gain yards that way. So that's really what we've been doing there offensively. Defensively, we're a 4-man front and try to roll an 8th guy into the box versus 2 back, and versus 1 back, we're going to defend space. So that's really, defensively, that's our big thing, is that if your personnel groupings equal 3 or more, so 21, 12, things like that, if your personnel grouping equals 3 or more, you're trying to use people to beat us. So we're going to defend the formations. If you jump into personnel groupings that equal less than 3, so 10 and 11, you're trying to use space to beat us. So that changes our philosophy as to how we defend you because of what you're trying to do. But, and that's the other thing is that, being the head coach here, the first thing I did when I accepted the job was I spent about 10 days just doing a 5-year analysis of the conference of who are the really good teams that are consistently in the top half of the league. What do those guys run? What has historically been run in the conference? People that have had success. So I think a lot of that things is what do you need to do to win? And then it comes down to who are your best 11 kids and what do those guys do well?
Coach, I've obviously seen a lot of defending personnel or defending space. I haven't heard that formula before of taking the personnel grouping and adding that up. Where did you get that idea? Where'd you come up with that?
We just, in a staff meeting, we were just talking about it, and really that was the antithesis of it, was that we, kind of like what gives me a pain in the butt or defensively, or what I see that is either like that I try to take advantage of or whatever, and then you look at, because if you can defend us offensively, like formation-wise, we don't run a ton of plays, but we run like what looks like a whole bunch of stuff. So if you can defend us, you get to see a lot of different looks. And then, trends in your league and trends in college football. So we really started to watch that, and we really started taking that approach to it a year ago. That's helped us out a great deal as far as, we believe in systems here as opposed to plays, not right or wrong, just kind of what we do. So there's always things that catch you or somebody that gives you a lot of trouble. There's a team in our league that'll get in 10 personnel and formation you into the boundary and kill you with Q run, and they're really, really good at it. So seeing some of those things really led us to do that and come up with that. But that as a fail-safe, just kind of general philosophy has helped us out a bunch.
Coach, and I share the philosophy you talk about with offense, that pro style or power spread. And the idea, too, of staying with trends. How are you able to, look at a trend, say, hey, we want to implement this, but still keep that playbook from getting too thick and cumbersome, especially for your players?
So I'm probably the opposite of every offensive guy you will talk to, is like I will constantly try to find things to take out of our playbook because of that exact reason. I heard Paul Chryst talk about it a long time ago, that you got what you got the first 3 days of install, and that's probably who you are and what you're going to go down with. You know, if the ship goes down, you're going down with those plays, but you run the risk of, if you're adding something week 7 or 8, you don't have any reps at it. So it might look good schematically, but you don't, how much do you trust that, or how much do you run that? And that always, you know, as far as I'm concerned, at least when I game plan, that always ends up killing me every year. I try, you know, I probably do it 2 or 3 games a year where I try to add a play that I think is going to be great because I see something on film, and it never is. You go back and you're like, I'm just taking reps away from other stuff that we're really good at. And so I've really gotten away from doing it, you know, adding any once the season starts. And I think the other thing too that's helped us by doing that is we have a system that's flexible within games and week to week, which is really simple, that really kind of allows you almost like a transformer kind of, or buffet, you know, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you can do it on the fly during the course of games and week to week. Like I said, that's been very, very helpful for us because, like I said, you just somebody might come out in something that's different, or you practice against something that's, you know, one look the whole time, and you just, this allows you to buy those and get out of jail free card for some of those issues.
Yeah, I always talk to our players about our offense, which, you know, as you describe yours, we used a similar type of offense at Baldwin Wallace University. And I talk to the players about our system really being like a Lego set, and that, you know, one week we might take those Legos and put them together, and we might just need a car. But then the next week we might take it apart and use those same pieces and build a rocket ship. So it really, when you have the components that fit together, you keep it simple, but you have the ability, like you said, to window dress it, to use your formations, your personnel. It remains simple for the players, but very complex to defend for a defense.
Yeah, exactly. That is. I just took a note of that because that's the perfect way to say it. You know, I'll tell you the other thing as a coach that I really like about doing it this way is, you know, the past 2 years we've been right around, you know, right at 500 yards a game and 41, 42 points a game on offense. And I have watched less film as far as preparation and game planning than I've ever watched in my entire career. We've gotten much more efficient at the way that we game plan for somebody. And I'll kind of just tell you the gist of it is, you know, really because you can build those things structurally within your system during the course of a game or a week, like you were saying with the Lego set. What we really try to do is every staff in America gets done with a practice every day. This happens even at Alabama or with the New England Patriots. They sit down in a staff meeting or sitting around afterwards, and they complain about at least 3 kids. Man, this kid wasn't very good, or I wish we had somebody better at those spots. Everybody's got those guys, 3 of them. So what I try to do is, I don't, you know, cover 2 is cover 2 and over and under, that's all great. I try to find out who the 3 guys are in my film with like efficiency cut-ups. I try to find out who are the 3 guys on your team that your staff wish wasn't on the field. And then I will try to make my good guys go against your bad guys as much as possible, running really basic stuff. And then afterwards, hopefully they go and continue that conversation. So really that is a big part of our game plan, that we can just watch efficiency cut-ups. I'll be honest with you, in the last 2 years, I haven't sat down and watched a full game, just snap after snap after snap, because it allows us to do this, because that kind of, you can hide guys doing it that way. But you make a inside run cut-up of games of 4 or more, you can find out who some not very good tacklers are pretty fast.
Absolutely. And Coach, it is about being, you know, working smarter, not harder sometimes. And obviously that's the third part of what you said your football team is going to be, that you're going to have smart football players. And that really, in my opinion, comes from 2 things. Number one, you have a coaching staff who teaches very well and can make those guys smarter. But number 2, you have players who are willing to commit to the mental part of the game and not just be robots out on the field, you know, running what the lines look like, but actually understanding everything that might happen along the way. So what things do you focus on as teachers of this game? What things do you do that get your players to be smart football players?
There's 2 big ones. One is about the kids. You know, for as much as old guys complain about millennials and they're always on their phones, or okay, well they might not be out, you know, getting in fist fights in the streets back in the day like everybody else used to, but these kids can process information and data mass amounts of it in very, very limited amounts of time. Their brains have been trained that way through every single thing that they do. So I think the kids have if you challenge your guys to be the smartest or obtain the most information, or that is, at least in my experience, that's been a very, very big point of pride with our guys, is that they like that feeling, and it adds to the confidence, kind of, like, I know something that you don't know, and I learned this. I'm smart. I'm, going to be in a better position or more confident than you are. So I think that's one big thing, is that, man, kids, don't sell them short. Those guys, as long as you can sit down and teach it to them, and teach it to them in a way that they're going to obtain it and learn it, that's been really good for us. And the second thing that we do is we do a pretty unique thing called football school, where, in the off season, we will get together within we use up like our allotted time with our kids to do football school. And football school for us it is nothing with, I shouldn't say nothing. At the very end, it's a little bit about what we do on each side of the ball, but really it's just general football theory. It's taking 10 steps back and explaining to everybody in the room, hey, these are personnel groupings. When we say 2-by-2 formation, that is what this is. When we count number 1, number 2, number 3 defensively, this is how you make these counts. This is what you do. When you talk about backfield depth, talk about O-line split and why they do that. One of the things I'll do, I'll go in there and I'll talk to the entire defense about how offensive lines make their calls, and how when you play a team that's a 10 personnel team or 11 personnel team, they're probably an inside zone team. So when you hear that domino effect of calls going down the line of scrimmage, you probably know it's the run play, and you probably know which way it's going. And then you can check with the depth of the back to confirm those things. So for us, we really, training wheels, arm floaties in the pool, like start it from scratch and really walk them through a really meticulous learning process. But the thing is, whenever we get together to meet, we'll never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, go longer than 30 minutes, because you'll lose them, and they want to teach you. It forces you as coaches to get them the information they need to know in the shortest amount of time, and that's in the way that those guys typically learn things the best. So we cover this stuff, and we cover it often, but only in 30 minutes, which allows your focus to stay stronger. And that's really been – it's really nothing even about the plays that you run. It's just general football theory. So I'd be curious to see, every now and then you laugh because you hear a kid come in and talk about, I was doing some of this stuff when I was playing some of the kid on Madden and online, and it really works. Like, yeah, that's what they do in college games. This is what you're doing in real games. So,
well, Coach, before we got going, we started to talk about some unique things that you do, and one of them is your game week practice. Take us through what's unique about your game week.
Sure. So we basically use 3 what we refer to as real practices for a game. So I'll take you through it. So high school guys obviously would kick it over one day, but so we'll play our game on Saturday. We'll get done with Saturday. The kids are completely off after that. We will come in Sunday mornings briefly for about an hour and a half. During that time, they'll watch, each side of the ball gets a lift and about a 20-play cut-up of the stuff they needed to see or needed to get cleaned up from the previous game. So we don't sit and watch the whole game or anything like that. Just really about 25 snaps. So on Sundays, our day after the game, I was going to count that as day 1, they're about an hour and a half early, so they're up and out of bed, and then the rest of the day completely off. Then when we hit Monday, so day 2, they are completely off. So they don't have a single meeting, nothing at all. So we use a business day, so it allows them to, if they want to meet with professors, advisors, office hours, go see a tutor, whatever, they have no conflicts at the beginning of their academic week whatsoever. Then Tuesday, so day 3, when we get together, we go out on the field. We'll meet first, and then we'll go out on the field for about 35 minutes with a helmets-only situational review. So that's when we do all of like the weird, the wind blows the tee off the ball, taking a safety on purpose, returning a kick after a safety, fire calls on field goal. And then we do about a 10-minute, again, within that 35-minute window. That takes about 22 minutes. Then we knock out a 10-minute, very, very basic opponent introduction. So the stuff that you've covered in meetings, now they're seeing it physically out on the field. Hey, this is going to be their base fronts, their base coverages, and then base formations, base plays defensively. Then on our Wednesdays and Thursdays, that's when we go about 2 hours long, and it's full gear, and we'll tackle. We'll tackle everybody, including the quarterbacks during that time. We're a rugby tackle team. I think that's one of the, I can get to that later, but we tackle, it's live. We go no longer than 2 hours. We do probably 2 team periods during those practices on average. We're not a big 7-on-7 team, so we typically will do those. And then Friday, the day before the game, we'll go helmets and shoulder pads. It's about an hour and 15 minutes, and it's 1,000,000 miles an hour, but for really, really short. So really we use that week to build up kind of as a crescendo to the game. And then one of the biggest things of doing that is, so basically a kid plays Saturday. He's got really all day Sunday, all day Monday, and 95% of Tuesday completely off. By the time Wednesday hits, we know everything there is to know about our opponent. It's given us time to finalize and get a better game plan together. We're not going to change anything by the time Wednesday hits. So the reps that you're getting and the looks that you're getting in practice are much higher quality from the time you start your actual physical prep for that week. And then on top of which, your good players who played a lot in the games, they're typically almost all recovered outside of a major injury from all that time that they have off. And then we build up. So then that Friday, duration's really short, so intensity's really high. And then the only time we adjust that plan is as the year goes on, where those Wednesday, Thursdays are about 2 hours until October hits. Once October hits, we go down to about an hour and 15 minutes on the field. And then once November hits, we're probably never on the field longer than 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. Because at that point in time, we are who we are. We're doing the things that we're going to do. It'll adjust a little bit, based on the opponent, but we're not going to be adding in new, wholesale new things by that point in time. So really, I want to save our kids' bodies and legs during that course of, that point in the season. But really, that's like I said, that's just, it's a lot different than how other people do it, but it's a lot more how you see people. My concern, I guess, with a regular game prep is there's so many peaks and valleys. You go from playing like crazy, then you drop down, then you're hard again right away in practice, then you taper all the way down right before the game, and it's a roller coaster, for what the kids' physicality and intensity levels need to be, as opposed to ours is that we're really heavy on the brain early on in the week and then heavier on the body later on in the week. And that, it's kind of like a teeter-totter, and it switches over probably about halfway through the practice on Thursday.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach and very unique. I can honestly say I haven't heard anything like that one. I've heard coaches kind of, and I think a lot of it comes from Chip Kelly, building up towards the end of the week. But everything you're doing actually makes sense, and I really like how you taper off as the season goes along as well. So, thank you for sharing those ideas. That I think that's something that coaches can learn from.
Yeah, I think so. But it's one of those that there's no way. I talk all the time with my old high school coach from Bettendorf High School in Iowa, and Coach Wiley, man, he's an old dude stuck in his ways. He's as smart of a football guy as you'll ever be around, but he will not change anything from how he likes. He's comfortable with what he does. So, he and I will get in healthy debates about that stuff, and he probably thinks I'm the craziest person walking around on the planet.
Coach, you mentioned the rugby tackling, and obviously at USA Football, that's a big thing we believe in. We've worked with AFCA, the NFL, Pete Carroll and Rocky Seto put together what we call shoulder tackling now. It used to be called hawk tackling. USA Rugby actually took part in this as well. So we're really big promoters of the shoulder tackle, which you're referring to as the rugby tackling. How is that implementing that made a difference for you guys defensively?
A lot of things. I'll tell you one is that I will tell you it's already starting right now. So if there's a high school coach listening to this, or a youth coach listening to this, or a college coach, doesn't matter. It is starting now. I have recruits that we win recruiting battles over with parents because we talk about how we tackle that way. and how the impact that makes on not only our productivity on the field, which as coaches we probably talk about too much, but the safety of their kids. It's happening now. So I think that is a very critical thing for our sport, just from a PR standpoint. I really believe that. But then for me, the biggest thing is that there's so much now quantifiable data that when you watch film, that you see how it exactly is implicated into your games. So there's a lot of things. Like for us, we've seen a lot of things as far as you can actually teach realistic tackles for how they actually happen in games. You can tackle during practice all the time, and there's no concussion, there's no injury. I think in the last, between spring, this fall, and this spring, I think we only had in practice one concussion in that entire time. So it's cleaned up a lot of those things. And then the other one is just, what's happening in games is finally what's happening in drills. I played football for a long time, obviously, and you just go through, and that was the thing that drives you nuts, as you do it in every other area. Like offensive guys hate 7-on-7 because it doesn't resemble at all what happens in a game. Okay? Well, when you go and do old school form tackling drills, when's the last time you've ever seen someone tackled like that in a game? I mean, it just doesn't happen. Where somebody's just running through and you just get chested and the guy kind of half jumps up there. So the quality of the drill work and the reps that you're getting are so much more realistic. And then when you get to the game film, you can sit there and say, hey, this is right, this is wrong. There's quantifiable, measurable things that you're now teaching. That's why I love inside zone and our gap stuff, is that there is no like running back has good vision. He has assignments and rules, and you're doing this right or you're doing this wrong. And anyone can get plugged in our system at tailback and follow these rules and go. I'm the biggest advocate of, the same thing. We saw the Seahawks video. That was like the first thing that got us talking about a couple of years ago. And then Ohio, started learning from Ohio State. And, Chris Ash, when he was at Iowa State, I always followed him, thought he was an extremely bright football guy. And they were making the switch to it. And then you go over and you're watching how all of these things apply to it. And we went up to Kansas State when they had their rugby tackling clinic there. And I work all those USA football camps. I really enjoy those. And that's just been it's a huge asset for the sport as a whole, and I think every team that does it, it makes your team better.
Well, Coach, those are available too. The nice thing we did is made those free, and there's 22 drills in there. Most of them, if not all of them, you can do without equipment on. You think of tackling today, most of your teaching can be done, not just teaching, but the drilling can be done year-round. Well, kids can work on some of those things without really doing a heck of a lot of banging, and I think it's an important thing to note. And it's interesting that you bring that up, that really is becoming a part of recruiting now, that players want to know, what kind of techniques are you teaching? I think that's an important thing for the recruits to understand. I think it's also important for college coaches to understand, too, that, hey, all eyes are on us to save this game, and we got to do it by finding the safest techniques and doing things the right way.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, people might think I'm crazy, but I think that the next two things that need to happen, and this is going to sound crazy, but I think the next two things that need to happen for our sport to continue to thrive, I think it's the most important at the youth level. And I think the two things that are going to have to happen are a wholesale belief and buy-in from younger coaches and coaches that want to coach the rugby style tackling. And I think the other thing, which is unrelated, I guess, but I think there needs to be less games played at the youth level and more drill work and fundamental work, because it's like you said, you can do those things and teach football, as opposed to this kid who's 10 looks like he's 16. I'm going to hand him the ball 15 times a game and watch him run over everybody. Because I'm trying to win the game. Well, if you remove that component, then it's just about teaching and producing high-quality reps and high-quality football. So by the time they end up playing games, when people pay attention and coaches lose jobs because they don't win enough, that's when you need to be playing the games, I guess. Exactly. But yeah, the rugby style tackling has just been awesome for us, and that's the other thing too. I always thought there was a stigma when you go through practice, and now a coach says, okay, well, this next period's live. Everybody kind of is like, oh, well, panics a little bit. it's like when you go to slow tempo and they go, oh, it's 2 minutes. Everybody kind of panics a little bit. Well, for us, so we tackle our quarterbacks. Every one of our quarterbacks gets tackled in practice. We don't have, and it's awesome. Our kids have no connotation attached with the word live that anything ever changes for how we do things. And we just go about business, and then we have measurable clips on film where we're grading tackling. And we tackle in a 10-minute tackle circuit every single day. So when we go spring football, we tackle our quarterbacks every single day. Because that's our Q run game and stuff. That's a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. So again, the stuff that's happening in games should be happening in your drill work and practices.
It's a good point. Now, do you continue that as you hit the season? Are your quarterbacks still live per se in some of those drills?
Here's my real answer. It depends. If I only have one quarterback that can win us a game, I probably don't tackle him much. If I have, if they can both run the ball, yeah, we tackle, and we'll continue to do that because then those guys stay and compete, in a big battle. One quarterback thing I started doing that I really like, so you bring in your freshman class that you try your best to know who they are and how good they are, and there's always some that are a little better than you thought and some that maybe aren't quite as developed as you had hoped. One thing I started doing that's because our quarterbacks run the ball, and we do some really simple RPOs, bubbles, and now screens or pitches or whatever. After about 4 or 5 practices in fall camp, we will take the 2 best athletes out of that freshman class, regardless of position, and make them come out 10 minutes early to do gun meshes and quarterback exchange. I catch gun snaps and go through a cadence, then do regular meshes, and then we'll keep them 10 minutes after and have them throw bubbles, nows, hitches. And then every year you just do that with the next 2 best athletes in that class. And now you've got in a pinch, after 4 years, 8 kids in your program outside of your quarterbacks that if they needed to could line up and run 80% of your stuff. So that's been a really helpful tool for us as far as developing guys and getting guys ready that if we were ever in a big pinch, and it came to that. So we had a really good quarterback in 15, and if something happened to him, we were in big trouble. So I wanted to avoid that.
Coach, you've shared some great ideas here today, and I know I learned some things, so I'm sure our listeners will as well. The one final question I have for you is, what's the one thing you would point to as giving your team the winning edge?
We try to not commit suicide during games. More games are lost than they are won, and our kids are very aware of that. I make that painfully aware, as it's all those hidden yardage. It's not the 60-yard touchdown run, and it's really not that stuff. It's that, we sit and we play a ton of cover 3. Very rarely do offenses have 8, 9 play drives. You can throw hitch a couple times, and offensive coordinators aren't going to do that the whole game. For us, it's how do we, when we run inside zone or power, we block it for 4. How do we figure out a way to make that turn into a 5? How do we make a 5 turn into a 6? And, we're really sound. I don't think you can win games on special teams. I think you can lose a lot of games on special teams, and we talk about that all the time. There's situations in games where we punt on 3rd down from our offense. If we get, 3rd and 18 and it's a windy day, I'm converting that sucker. I'm going to punt it out of our offense when you don't have somebody back there, and we're going to net 50, 60 yards of field position, which was certainly way better than running a play and then a punt team. So we try to not lose games. And I know that sounds kind of a cliche, corny answer, but we make you beat us. If you beat us, look at the 2 games we lost last year. We've had the 2 best seasons in school history the last 2 years. We lost 2 games last year. One team absolutely took us to the woodshed early on because we thought we were a little better than what we were, and they destroyed us. And then the second game, we turned the ball over. And as I said, that was the only 2 games we lost, and we deserved to lose both of them. The other games we won, it's probably not necessarily that we didn't just line up and have guys that mulled everybody over. They probably made more critical errors than we did. And I think that we do a good job stressing those things. So I wish there was a sexier, more fun answer, but
makes
really
sense.
That's probably it.
Coach, how can our listeners connect with you?
Email me. We're very active on social media on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter. And by us, I mean our whole staff. We're big with that, and we have a big social media release coming out next week about helmets, which will be very exciting. But yeah, Twitter, we're very active on, like I said, on Twitter, Instagram, and not really Facebook, but most Twitter. So yeah, find us there, and anything I can do to help out anybody who's listening. This is a great podcast. I listen constantly, and I learn 10 things new from this thing all the time. And first heard about it from Jake Mueller, the head coach of Muscatine High School in Iowa, and he got me hooked. So anything I can do to help out ever, or my staff can ever do for anybody, just let us know.
Coach, thanks for taking the time today. Good luck to you and the Coyotes as you approach the 2017 season.
Thank you much.
Thanks again for listening to Coaching Coordinator. Please follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski. And stay tuned for new episodes, whether you're playing here in the fall or in the spring. We're going to take care of you and make sure you're prepared for your next season, as well as giving you the answers and things that come up during the season. If you have the time, head over to iTunes and click 5-star for a rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It helps the podcast.